All right. Do you guys believe in Geno Smith yet? The Seahawks had 358 total yards on offense today. Geno Smith accounted for 335 of it. And this is really nothing new for Geno Smith. Geno has 19 wins since taking over as the Seahawks starter in 2022. That makes him ninth over that period of time. He's sixth in passing yards over that period of time, sixth in touchdown passes over that period of time, 10th in QBR over that period of time. I don't know who still needs to hear it, but Geno Smith is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. The stats and the numbers back that up. And thank God, too, because the Seahawks had to lean heavily on Geno today. The Seahawks didn't have much of a running game, and I know Kenneth Walker wasn't out there. I don't think it looks much different, even if he was. The Patriots only allowed 70 rushing yards in week 1, 46 in week 2. So that Patriots run defense might prove to be a problem for a lot of teams this year. But as long as you can throw the ball, you'll be good. The Seahawks had 2 receivers go over 100 yards today, neither of which was Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf caught 10 for 129 yards and a touchdown. Jackson Smith-Njigba caught 12 for 117 yards. Tyler Lockett only caught 2 for 15, but they were crucial catches. He also drew a pass interference in the end zone that led to a Seahawks touchdown. But that's what the problem's going to be, right? If you shut down Tyler Lockett, you're making yourself susceptible to big plays from DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba. If you focus on those two, that means you're going to leave Tyler Lockett one-on-one, and Tyler Lockett's going to find the soft spot in your zone or in your man, and he's going to find ways to expose you and make some plays. And that's why I would actually make the argument that the Seahawks have the best receiving core in the NFL. And yeah, a lot of you are going to say the Dolphins, and I would put the Dolphins right up there with them. As long as OBJ's not in that field, the Dolphins are an explosive duo with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. The Seahawks are an explosive trio with Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith-Njigba. And really, you could go one tier beyond that. Jake Bobo is no scrub either. The Seahawks have depth at receiver. Plus, none of our receivers choke out their pregnant girlfriends. So we got that going for us too. Speaking of the Dolphins, though, guess who the Seahawks' next opponent is? Just happens to be those very same Miami Dolphins in Seattle. And potentially without Tua, who is still listed as questionable. We did get a report from Adam Schefter today that Tua has no intentions of retiring, which we kind of all thought that, you know. You can make the argument that, and I did make the argument on this channel, that I think somebody should probably protect Tua from himself. I've got a whole other video on that. Be sure to check that out. But even if the Dolphins don't have Tua, you know who might, just might be there? And if you saw my video the other day, you heard it here first. The Dolphins might make a move for Russell Wilson. At the time of this recording, Justin Fields is 10 of 12 for 101 yards and a passing touchdown right now in the Steelers game against the Broncos. He's also got another 26 yards on the ground. If Fields keeps lighting it up against the Broncos, then if I'm the Steelers, I've got to stick with Fields. Fields has got to be my guy now, especially since the quarterback competition was such a tight race this preseason. Well, now Fields has got us 2-0. He's got the offense looking good. I can't switch quarterbacks now. And if I'm in that position, well, now Russell Wilson's tradable. And as I said in my video yesterday, if I'm Russell Wilson, I actually don't even really mind that. I don't dislike the idea of going to Miami. I'd much rather throw to the Dolphins receiving core than the Steelers receiving core. And even when Tua comes back, if I'm going to sit on a bench this year, well, I'd rather do it while living in Miami all winter than while living in Pittsburgh all winter. Not to mention, and you know, maybe this sounds a bit harsh, but it's just a reality. Tua's very injury prone at this point in his career. So if I'm his backup, I'm probably going to get some playing time. You know, and maybe it sounds harsh to look at it that way, but that's just a reality. But back to the Seahawks, it was a solid win with a lot of things to clean up, little things, but things to clean up defensively. The defense looked really good in week 1 against the Broncos. It felt like every time Bo Nix threw the ball, there were several blue hats or silver rather, I guess. There were a lot of Seahawks players to the ball right away. Against the Patriots, it didn't feel like the Seahawks had that same urgency, that same effort, that same energy. There was a lot of missed tackles against the Patriots today. And if I'm Mike McDonald, I'm excited for this film session because we won the game, but we've got some fixable things to clean up. You know, missed tackles, that's fixable in season to clean up. You know, better tackling form. It's possible to clean those things up during the season. There's certain things that are a little bit harder to clean up during the season. You know, if I've got a receiver that just needs a ton of work, that isn't quite reading routes right, isn't quite doing things right. That's a little harder to clean that type of thing up during the season. You kind of want the full off season to work on stuff like that. If whatever scheme you came into the season with just isn't working, it's a lot harder to clean that up and come up with like a whole new playbook in the middle of the season. Fundamental things like tackling and wrapping up and stuff like that, that's fixable. Overall, there's a lot to like about the Mike Macdonald era so far. We're only 2 weeks into it, but there's a lot to like. For me, the player of the game has to be Geno Smith. When you have two receivers, both go over 100 yards, and you had the same quarterback playing that entire game, you got to look at quarterback. I mean, quarterback, you got to give him a lot of credit, a lot of props. So for me, Geno Smith was the player of the game. Looking ahead, like I said, the Seahawks have the Dolphins coming up, and the Seahawks are about to face the best receiving core they've played all year. Because when you look back, the Broncos in week 1, who's their number one receiver? It's Josh Reynolds. Who's the Patriots' number one receiver? It's listed as Demario Douglas, but I'd actually argue that Jalen Polk and KJ Osborne are bigger threats. The Dolphins' number 2 receiver is Jalen Waddle, and I would make the argument that Jalen Waddle is better than any of the receivers on the Patriots or the Broncos. This is going to be the first real test for that Seahawks secondary that is pretty good. Reek Woolen, obviously, he's been good for a few years now. Devin Witherspoon had a great rookie year last year, looked really good early on this year. And then Julian Love at safety, he's been killing it ever since midseason last year. So the Seahawks do have a great secondary, but this is going to be their biggest test yet. And what a time to have that test, right? Right in the middle of the Tua situation. You might get Skylar Thompson at quarterback, even if the Dolphins and the Steelers take my advice and trade Russell Wilson. Even if that happens, it's really hard to imagine Russell learning a full offensive playbook in under a week, on a travel week of all things, too. From an injury perspective, for the Dolphins, Tua is obviously listed as questionable. We'll learn a lot more as the week goes on. Odell Beckham Jr. is still listed as out on the injury report for an undisclosed off-season procedure. And at some point, the Dolphins are going to have to reveal, or somebody's going to have to reveal, whether it's OBJ, whether it's them, I don't know. At some point, we're going to have to find out what that off-season procedure was. It's very strange to not have the details on something like that. We always know what procedures and surgeries are happening to players in the offseason. It's always reported. Hell, we know what herbs Aaron Rodgers is taking, but for some reason, we don't know what OBJ is up to. Also for the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert remains on the IR. For the Seahawks, Boye Mafe and Jerome Baker got hurt against the Patriots today. So obviously we're going to wait to hear their injury status as the week goes on. And then obviously the biggest injury concern for the Seahawks right now is Kenneth Walker III. He got hurt at the end of the Broncos game in week 1. Having said that, the Dolphins aren't nearly as stingy against the run as the Patriots. The Dolphins allowed 108 rushing yards to Buffalo on Thursday night and 128 to the Jaguars last Sunday. So even if the Seahawks have to go with Zach Charbonnet, who I think is a much better running back than how he played today, even the Seahawks have to go with Charbonnet, I think they'll be fine. I think Charbonnet is a solid running back. So I don't think running the ball is going to be nearly as difficult this coming Sunday here in Seattle. I'm Seattle Mike on the mic. Please remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow and turn on those notifications so that you don't miss an upload.